Let's talk about loss, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about loss. All right, sorry, that was really cheesy, but welcome to the channel. Okay, so this is gonna be like a masterclass in loss. Can you lose your desire? What does it mean to lose your desire? And are there ways in which you can get it back? I think this is an important question. So thank you for asking. So, and when I say thank you, I mean all of you. So, loss. Okay, so there's a few ways that we're going to go about this, okay? We're going to talk about the scripture, we're going to talk about Neville, and we're going to talk about what the brain does as well with loss. So, why don't we jump in? So, again, loss in the brain is perceived as a threat, okay? So, your brain goes through various scenarios based upon your past experiences, okay? Keep that in mind, okay? So your past experiences are framing what you don't want to lose and how you don't want to lose it and how much of a loss it might feel. And that's your brain's way of just operating. It's just a loss aversion machine. It doesn't like to lose anything, okay? So it's going to do anything and everything to make you feel like you're in control enough that you feel like you can't lose what you desire, okay? Now, with Neville, it's very interesting. He says something very, 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 very poignant and very powerful, is that there is no such thing as loss except the belief in loss. Okay? Just take that in for a second. Because all of this language, all of the fear, all of the what-if scenarios that we let cogitate in our mind, right? They're just swirling around like a whirlpool, like a mental whirlpool, okay? Don't jump in. Don't get lost in it, right? Because if Neville and what he says is true about loss, then loss doesn't exist, right? Loss is simply an illusion that we make up, and so then we experience it. Because remember, we experience our state. And what is a state? It's a body of what? Of beliefs that we accept and we rehearse. Okay, so when we are defining loss, when we are trying to repel, as in push away loss, right? That's like saying, hey, I'm gonna really not talk about having my keys and I don't want to really worry about losing them. And so you and I are just going to sit here and talk about my fear of losing my keys, right? And I'm really, really afraid of losing them. Oh my gosh, what happens if I lose my keys? And if I lose them, and they're right here, right? And yet at the same time, the only thing that we're thinking about is losing it, right? And even though it's here, we're still talking about losing it, right? And what is here? Well, here is your imagination, right? Here is always now. Here is you experiencing your desire to fulfillment in here, right? So the keys are always here. The keys are always here. They may not be here physically in 3D right now, right? If you've lost them physically, but here mentally, they're always here. This is the same with your special significant other. This is the same with your lost pair of socks. This is the same with Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. I don't even know if that's true, but my point is that loss is only a belief. That's all it is. Now, if you think that's a little bit like, whoa, whatever, like, I mean, he's talking crazy because clearly you can lose your keys, right? That was meant to be dramatic. So what we're dealing with, though, is that there is a world of mirrors, right? And all it does is it mirrors you. That's all that's happening. So if you believe loss is real, then you will experience loss, okay? Now, the Bible, very interestingly, if you aren't really into the Bible, I totally am with you, but just note that the Bible is not historical at all. It's a psychological document. You would be better to understand the Bible more as a book about self-improvement, a book about self-awareness, right? Because that's really what it is. Neville says that the Bible was written to the inner self, right? And so all the language, all the stories, and I'm going to break this down in a series actually of breaking down of how to understand the Bible biblically. But when I say biblically, I don't mean Christian wise or in the kind of like Judaism sense or in the Islamic sense. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about in the esoteric mystical sense, right? A lot of my training is in that as well. So let's go back to this. In the Bible, there is a parable, and the parable is a very famous one, and it's about these 100 sheep, right? Now sheep are an esoteric or mystical metaphor for desires, okay? And what happens is that in the story, one of these sheep decides to jump fence and like, I'm gonna chill and do my own thing, right? Probably went to go smoke weed. I have no idea. Probably burn a little bit of his wool, whatever. So anyhow, whatever he did, he jumped the crew and was like, guys, peace out, right? And then Jesus goes and gets it. Okay. This is very, very key, because remember, this is speaking about the role and the power and the influence of the imagination, okay? So then the imagination goes and gets it. Then Jesus Christ goes and gets the lost desire, right? What is this saying then? So of course, in mystical language, it's saying there's no such thing as loss. Why? Because you can go in here and you can actually go and get what you think you've lost, okay? So, and I'm going to go into this a little bit deeper in a second, but there's also another verse that says, in your anger, do not sin. Okay, now let's break down sin for a millisecond, okay? Because sin just means, and there's more to this, but sin just means your desire that has not been met, your unachieved desire, a broken heart, for example, right? So like somebody who's like, oh my gosh, this happened and I can't ever get it back, right? That's sinning. If you believe that you can't get something back, that is sin. If you believe in loss, that is sin, right? And sin separates you from God. Okay, that means sin separates you from using the imagination in the powerful way that it's already primed to be used to get you what you want. Okay, so sin is just a gap. It's a gap, and that gap though is made wider and wider and wider the more that we believe loss is possible. So if you've broken up with like an SP, a significant other, whatever it is, right, and you believe that's never going to happen, they're never going to come back, and it's impossible, and I see too much around me, and so you're always really kind of making the circumstances around you more powerful. Like they're more powerful than your imagination, which is God, right? So what ends up happening is you're only going to experience that. That's it. Because we only get what we believe, right? And so what's happening is, since you've believed in loss, you're going to experience it, right? And so what we have to do is, for example, if we believe in loss on the macro level, and we're going to go on this in another video, there's macro beliefs and there's micro beliefs. You're going to fundamentally experience some form of loss in the micro, which means in your personal set of beliefs, right? So the macro is, oh, well, there's loss because look at how the world operates, right? There's either loss of life, people lose their keys every day, all of these kinds of things. That's the macro, right? You make these generalized beliefs, and then you experience them through yourself, which is the micro, okay? Again, I'm going to go into that deeper in another video. But back to the lost sheep. Your lost desire is never lost because it can always be rescued. It can always be received. And so, again, can you get angry about not having your SP? Can you get angry about your mortgage falling through? Of course. It says, in your anger, don't sin. But this is key. Do you understand what it's really saying? Is don't give up on your desire. Because when you give up on your desire, that's sin. So even if you experience loss, like again, back to a housing metaphor. If you're going through and you're like, no, I did all the things right. And you know what? I should have, like the mortgage should have went through, and it didn't, right? Who said? So meaning just because it didn't happen in that moment doesn't mean it's not supposed to happen. Doesn't mean it won't happen. So if you give up, then you've sinned. But if your desire is, I want a big house and the mortgage is going to go through, there's no plan B, right? Then you haven't sinned. So this is the difference between loss and sin, and understanding what loss is. Because loss is an illusion, right? And so even if you look out here and you're like, well, yeah, but my best friend lost his house, right? So then doesn't that prove that loss is real? No. It only proves that he has a belief that loss is real, so he has to experience it, right? And that's not a judgment call. That's just what it is. And so you have to understand that there's loads of nuances and paradoxes here that we have to actually tease out, okay? And most of the paradox, by the way, which means you have two opposites kind of working together, right, is that you you have to realize that most of the paradox is because other people believe them. And then you've kind of not written them off, but actually written them on your mind, and you've accepted them, and you've normalized them, and you've identified as them and with them, and then you behave with them in your life. So, there's way more on this, and I'm sure there's gonna be a part 2 on this. You guys have been awesome and been asking loads of questions. So, we're gonna go through this, but I know a lot of people have been asking about loss. So I wanna jump on here and give you some of the breakdown. So this is kind of like a mini masterclass in loss today. So again, hope this was helpful, and get in touch for coaching, get in touch for techniques on how to reduce loss and to reduce the impact of the belief of loss, and to pretty much get rid of loss altogether, because I think that's super important. So much love to you all. Thank you all for your support, and have a great day.